In the early 8th century, the Islamic expansion had become a powerful and transformative force sweeping across the Mediterranean world. The Umayyad Caliphate, having conquered the Iberian Peninsula in 711 CE, had established a robust foothold in the Iberian territories and was progressively pushing northward into the European continent. By 732 CE, the political landscape of Western Europe was fragmented and vulnerable. The Frankish kingdoms, led by Charles Martel, meaning the Hammer, represented one of the most organized and militarily capable Christian powers in the region. Charles Martel was not yet a king but served as the mayor of the palace, effectively ruling the Frankish territories with significant political and military authority. The Umayyad forces, led by Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, the governor of Al-Andalus, Islamic Iberia, had been systematically expanding their territories. Their military campaigns were characterized by rapid cavalry movements, sophisticated tactics, and a proven track record of conquering diverse territories. The Muslim armies had already successfully invaded and conquered significant portions of North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. Charles Martel understood the potential existential threat posed by the continued expansion of the Umayyad forces. He recognized that if the Islamic armies were to break through into the heart of Western Europe, the entire political and religious landscape could be dramatically transformed. The potential fall of the Frankish territories would have opened the way for further Islamic expansion into what we now know as France, Germany, and potentially beyond. The geographical setting between Tours and Poitiers was strategically significant. This central region of France provided a critical battleground where the expansionist ambitions of the Umayyad Caliphate would collide with the defensive strategies of the Frankish kingdom. The terrain was mixed, featuring both open plains and areas with rolling hills, which would play a crucial role in the upcoming battle's dynamics. Charles Martel had been preparing for this potential conflict. He had developed a unique military strategy that combined infantry discipline with mobile units, a significant departure from the traditional European warfare of that time. His troops were well disciplined, equipped with heavy armor, and trained in close combat formations that would prove crucial against the more mobile Arabic cavalry. The stage was set for what would become one of the most consequential battles in medieval European history. The confrontation would not just be a military engagement but a pivotal moment that would potentially determine the future religious and cultural trajectory of Western Europe. The Muslim advance into the Iberian Peninsula began in 711 CE, marking one of the most significant and rapid conquests in medieval history. Led by Tariq ibn Ziyad, a Berber commander under the Umayyad Caliphate, the initial invasion force crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with approximately 7,000 troops. This small but highly motivated army quickly overwhelmed the Visigothic kingdom of Hispania, which was weakened by internal political conflicts and ineffective leadership. Within a remarkably short period, the Muslim forces conquered nearly the entire Iberian Peninsula. The decisive Battle of Guadalete in 711 CE saw the Visigothic king Roderick defeated and killed, effectively dismantling the existing political structure. By 718 CE, almost the entire peninsula was under Muslim control, with only small Christian kingdoms in the mountainous northern regions maintaining their independence. The conquest was characterized by a relatively sophisticated approach to governance. Unlike many medieval conquests, the Muslim rulers often allowed local Christian and Jewish populations to maintain their religious practices, albeit with certain restrictions and additional taxes. This policy of relative tolerance helped stabilize the newly conquered territories and facilitated a smoother transition of power. In the early decades of the 8th century, a powerful wave of change swept northward from the sun-baked plains of Iberia. The Umayyad forces, emboldened by their successes in the peninsula, set their sights on lands beyond the towering Pyrenees. Their vision was grand, their ambition boundless, as they sought to extend the Dar al-Islam, the realm of Islam, into the heart of European territory. These weren't mere raiders or opportunistic invaders. The Muslim armies moved with purpose, their advance driven by a complex tapestry of motivations. In their mind's eye, they saw rich agricultural lands waiting to be claimed, prosperous cities ripe for conquest, and souls ready to be brought under the banner of their faith. Each step northward was calculated, each conquest adding to their growing empire. The Aquitaine region fell before their advance like autumn leaves before a wind. Cities that had stood proud since Roman times opened their gates or fell to siege. Some local populations fled into the darkness of night, others submitted to new rulers, while some stood their ground only to be overcome. The Muslim advance seemed as inevitable as the tide, their reputation growing with each victory. At the heart of this expansion was an army that seemed to have stepped out of the future. Picture them as they moved across the landscape. Swift cavalry units that could appear like ghosts and vanish just as quickly, their weapons glinting with superior craftsmanship. Their military machine was a marvel of its age, not just in weapons and tactics, but in the sophisticated support system that kept it moving, fed, and supplied deep in foreign territory. But what made this army truly remarkable was its diversity. Here rode Arabs whose ancestors had emerged from the desert, their traditional military prowess enhanced by years of conquest. Beside them, Berber cavalry, masters of swift, decisive warfare. And among their ranks, local converts brought their knowledge of the terrain and people. It was an army that represented not just military might, but a new way of organizing human society. By 732 CE, their advance had reached a critical moment. Under the brilliant leadership of Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, Muslim forces had penetrated deep into Frankish territories. Their previous victories had created an aura of invincibility, their very approach causing terror in the hearts of their opponents. The Christian kingdoms of Western Europe faced what seemed an unstoppable force, one that threatened not just their territories but their very way of life. The stakes could not have been higher. Had their expansion continued unchecked, Europe might today tell a very different story. Imagine a continent where the call to prayer echoed from minarets in Paris, where Arabic script adorned the great buildings of Tours, where trade routes and cultural exchanges flowed in entirely different patterns. The very fabric of European civilization hung in the balance. Their strategic objectives went far beyond mere territorial conquest. Each victory brought not just land under their control, but opened new possibilities for cultural exchange, religious conversion, and economic transformation. They weren't just conquering territory, they were offering a different vision of what Europe could become. As their forces gathered for what would become the decisive Battle of Tours, few could have known they stood at one of history's great crossroads. The Muslim armies, confident in their strength and divine purpose, prepared to push even further into the heart of Europe. But fate, as it often does, had other plans, and the clash that followed would echo through the centuries, marking one of history's great turning points. This was more than a military campaign. It was a moment when two civilizations, two visions of the future, came face to face. The outcome would shape not just the political boundaries of Europe, but its cultural, religious, and social development for centuries to come. The Muslim commanders were not merely conducting raids but appeared to have a more comprehensive strategy of territorial conquest. Their ultimate goal seemed to be to establish a permanent presence in Western Europe, potentially mirroring their successful conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. The stage was now set for a confrontation that would prove decisive in determining the future trajectory of European civilization. The impending Battle of Tours would become a critical moment that would test the limits of Muslim expansion and the resolve of the Frankish defenders. In October 732 CE, the landscape of Western Europe was about to be fundamentally transformed. The battle would be fought on terrain between the cities of Tours and Poitiers in central France, a region characterized by its mixed landscape of open plains and rolling hills that would prove critical to the battle's outcome. On the eve of destiny, two formidable armies gathered on the fields of Tours, each representing not just military might, but entire civilizations. In the crisp autumn air, their campfires dotted the landscape like earthbound stars, as warriors on both sides prepared for the clash that would shake the foundations of medieval Europe. On one side stood the Frankish army, under the stern gaze of Charles Martel. 15,000 to 20,000 men strong, they were the shield of Western Europe. These weren't mere soldiers. They were a human fortress. Clad in heavy armor that gleamed in the morning sun, their long spears created a forest of steel. The Frankish warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their formations tight as a clenched fist, their discipline forged through years of defending their homeland. The heart of Martel's force was his infantry. Sturdy, determined men who had learned to fight as one. Their heavy armor might have slowed others, but these warriors had trained until the weight became like a second skin. Each man knew his place, understood his role in the greater whole. Their motivation ran deeper than mere military duty. They fought for their homes, their families, and their faith, their hearts burning with religious conviction. Facing them across the battlefield was the magnificent army of Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi. The Umayyad force was a sight to behold. 20,000 to 25,000 warriors, their ranks a living testament to the diversity and reach of the Islamic Empire. Here were Arabs whose ancestors had ridden out of the desert, swift Berber horsemen who could strike like lightning, and local converts who brought their own martial traditions to this grand assembly. The Umayyad army was the very embodiment of mobility and sophistication. Their lighter armor allowed for quick, decisive movements, while their weapons represented the pinnacle of medieval military technology. The heart of their force was their cavalry, masterful horsemen who could maneuver as one, their charges like avalanches of steel and flesh. Their horses were not mere beasts of burden but partners in war, trained to respond to the slightest touch of the knee or shift of weight. But what made this army truly remarkable was its diversity. In their ranks, one could hear prayers in different languages, see fighting styles from across the known world, and witness military traditions that stretched from the sands of Arabia to the shores of Spain. Each ethnic group brought its own strengths, its own tactics, its own way of war, all unified under the banner of the Umayyad Caliphate. The contrast between these armies was stark and fascinating. The Franks stood like an immovable object, their formations dense, their strategy based on holding ground and repelling attacks. The Umayyad forces were the irresistible force, their strength lying in movement, in the ability to strike from unexpected angles, to flow around obstacles like water around stone. As the morning mists cleared and the armies faced each other, it was more than just a military confrontation. It was a clash of worlds. Two different approaches to warfare, two distinct military traditions, two opposing views of the future of Europe, all about to meet in one of history's most decisive battles. The fate of continents would rest on whose strategy would prevail: the steadfast defense of the Franks or the swift, decisive strikes of the Umayyad cavalry. The air grew thick with tension as the commanders made their final preparations. Banners snapped in the wind, horses stamped impatiently, and thousands of warriors waited for the signal that would begin one of the most significant battles in medieval history. In these moments before the storm, both armies stood ready to write their names in the annals of time, their courage and determination about to be tested in the crucible of combat. The battle began with the Umayyad forces displaying their characteristic mobile warfare tactics. Abdul Rahman's cavalry attempted to use their traditional strategy of rapid movements and flanking maneuvers. However, Carlos Martel had anticipated these tactics and prepared a unique defensive strategy. Martel's troops formed a dense, virtually impenetrable infantry formation known as the shield wall technique. This formation proved exceptionally effective against the mobile cavalry units. The Frankish soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, creating a wall of shields and long spears that made traditional cavalry charges extremely difficult. On that fateful day, as dawn broke over the fields of Tours, two mighty armies faced each other in what would become one of history's most pivotal battles. The air was thick with tension as the Umayyad cavalry, renowned for their swift and deadly charges, thundered across the battlefield. Yet time and again, they crashed against an immovable wall, the disciplined ranks of Frankish infantry, standing shoulder to shoulder, their shields locked in an impenetrable barrier. Hour after hour, the drama unfolded. The Frankish warriors, their muscles burning with fatigue, maintained their formations with remarkable discipline. The coordination between their units was like a deadly dance, each movement precisely timed, each position carefully maintained. As the sun traced its arc across the sky, an unusual sight for medieval warfare emerged, a battle that raged for an entire day. Then came the moment that would echo through centuries. Abdul Rahman, the brilliant commander of the Umayyad forces, rode forward with his elite guards. In the chaos of combat, amid the clash of steel and the cries of warriors, the unthinkable happened. The great leader fell, his death sending shockwaves through the Muslim ranks. What had been a coordinated assault suddenly became uncertain, as confusion rippled through the command chain like a stone disturbing still water. Yet even in retreat, the Umayyad forces displayed their military prowess. This was no panicked flight but a measured withdrawal, their disciplined ranks maintaining formation even as they pulled back from the field. Their military might, though checked, remained largely intact, a testament to their professional training and leadership. The significance of this day reached far beyond the immediate clash of arms. Here, on these blood-soaked fields, the future of European civilization hung in the balance. Had the battle swung differently, had the Umayyad forces broken through, we might today tell a very different story of Western Europe. The potential for Islamic expansion into the heart of Europe was real, carrying with it the possibility of profound religious and cultural transformation. Instead, in the battle's immediate aftermath, we witnessed the birth of a new order. The Frankish territories, their borders now secure, began to coalesce into a stronger political entity. Carlos Martel, the architect of this crucial victory, emerged not just as a military commander but as a leader whose influence would shape generations to come. This battle, this single day of combat, became more than a military engagement. It became a symbol. In the annals of history, Tours stands as a moment when the course of European civilization pivoted, when the future of a continent was decided not just by the clash of arms, but by the determination of those who stood firm against seemingly insurmountable odds. In the gathering dusk of that momentous day, as the warriors tended their wounds and counted their dead, Few could have known the full magnitude of what they had achieved. They had not just won a battle, they had helped shape the future of Western civilization, creating a moment that would be remembered and studied for centuries to come. Historians continue to debate the battle's exact details and long-term implications. While some consider it a definitive moment that stopped Islamic expansion, others view it as one significant engagement in a complex historical process. If you're enjoying this historical narrative, we want to hear from you. Which aspect of the Battle of Tours fascinates you the most? Was it the strategic brilliance of Carlos Martel, the sophisticated Umayyad cavalry, or the potential historical implications? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's discuss this incredible moment in medieval history. The Battle of Tours represented far more than a single military engagement. It effectively created a decisive geographical and cultural boundary that would shape European civilization for centuries to come. By halting the Umayyad advance, Carlos Martel prevented what could have been a fundamental transformation of Western European religious, political, and cultural landscapes. The echoes of battle horns still resonate through the corridors of history, marking a moment that would forever change the face of Western civilization. The Muslim expansion's halt stands as one of history's great turning points, a crossroads where the future of Europe hung in the balance. Picture, if you will, the landscape of medieval Europe in those decisive moments. In the churches and monasteries that dotted the countryside, monks continued their ancient rituals, unaware that their very way of life was being preserved by events unfolding on distant battlefields. The Catholic Church, with its towering cathedrals and influential papal authority, maintained its spiritual grip on the continent, its future secured by the clash of armies. Enter Carlos Martel, the hammer of the Franks, whose leadership emerged like a beacon in uncertain times. His victory wasn't merely a triumph of arms, it was the birth of a new political order. The Frankish territories, once fragmented, united under his banner, creating a power base that would reshape European politics for centuries to come. But the story doesn't end there. From this crucible of conflict rose the magnificent Carolingian dynasty, a family line that would produce some of history's most remarkable rulers. Pepin the Short, Carlos Martel's son, built upon his father's foundation. Yet it was Charlemagne, the grandson of the great warrior, who would elevate the dynasty to unprecedented heights. Imagine the grandeur of the Carolingian court, where scholars gathered to preserve ancient knowledge, where monks painstakingly copied manuscripts, and where the seeds of a cultural renaissance took root. This wasn't just a dynasty, it was a revolution in governance, education, and cultural development. The Carolingians created sophisticated administrative systems that would influence European bureaucracy for generations. The culmination of this grand historical arc was the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire. Picture the scene in Rome, Christmas Day, 800 CE. Charlemagne kneeling before the Pope, receiving the imperial crown. This moment marked the birth of a new political entity that would dominate European politics for nearly a millennium. It was a masterful blend of Roman imperial traditions with Christian governance, creating a model of leadership that would inspire rulers for centuries. The consequences rippled outward like waves on a pond. Cultural boundaries solidified, preserving the rich mosaic of European languages, customs, and traditions. Trade routes that had existed for centuries continued to flourish, maintaining the economic lifeblood of the continent. In monasteries and early universities, European intellectual traditions endured and evolved, preserving classical knowledge while fostering new ideas. Yet this was more than just preservation. It was transformation. The battle's impact extended into every corner of medieval life. In village squares and city markets, in noble courts and peasant hovels, the world was changing. The halt of Muslim expansion didn't just prevent change, it catalyzed a uniquely European development path. Modern historians paint a complex picture of these events. They speak of cultural exchange rather than simple conflict, of gradual evolution rather than sudden change. The Battle of Tours, they argue, was as much about symbolism as it was about military victory. It represented a moment when Europe began to define itself, to chart its own course through history. This legacy endures in the very foundations of European civilization. The political structures that emerged, the cultural institutions that developed, and the intellectual traditions that flourished all trace their roots to this pivotal period. It was a time when the future of a continent was shaped, when the course of history itself seemed to turn on the outcome of a single battle. As we look back across the centuries, we see not just a military victory, but the birth of medieval Europe as we know it. The preservation of Christianity, the rise of powerful dynasties, the blending of religious and political authority. All these elements combined to create a unique civilization that would influence the world for centuries to come. In the end, this wasn't just about halting an expansion. It was about defining a civilization. The consequences of these events continue to resonate in the halls of power, in the churches and universities, and in the very fabric of European society. It stands as a testament to how single moments can echo through the centuries, shaping the destiny of nations and peoples for generations to come. The Battle of Tours transcends its immediate military context, representing a profound moment of civilizational intersection. It symbolizes more than a mere conflict between two armies. It was a critical juncture that would shape the cultural, religious, and geopolitical landscape of Europe for centuries to come. In the mists of medieval France, on a battlefield near Tours in 732 CE, more than armies clashed. Entire civilizations met in a moment that would echo through the centuries. This wasn't just a battle. It was a pivotal moment that would shape the cultural DNA of Europe. Imagine standing at that battlefield, watching as two distinct worlds collided. On one side, the Islamic forces that had swept across North Africa and Spain, bringing with them a revolutionary new culture and faith. On the other, the Frankish forces under Charles Martel, representing the emerging Christian European order. What happened there would draw lines on the map that would last for centuries. But this wasn't simply a clash of swords and spears. The Battle of Tours created something far more subtle and lasting, a cultural boundary that would define the geographical limits of Islamic expansion into Western Europe. Like a great invisible wall, it established where one civilization would end and another would begin. Yet, contrary to simple narratives of conflict, what emerged in the battle's wake was far more complex. Picture a cultural frontier where ideas flowed even when armies couldn't. Despite the military confrontation, channels of intellectual exchange remained open. Islamic mathematics, science, and philosophy would still find their way into European monasteries and schools. The boundary created at Tours wasn't an iron curtain. It was more like a semi-permeable membrane, allowing the flow of ideas while maintaining distinct cultural identities. The battle became woven into the tapestry of European historical consciousness. In the centuries that followed, it transformed from a military engagement into something almost mythical, a moment when the future of a continent hung in the balance. It became a powerful symbol of cultural resilience, a story told and retold to successive generations. Consider the geopolitical ripples that spread from this single event. The victory consolidated Frankish power, creating the conditions that would eventually give rise to Charlemagne's empire. It preserved the existing political structure of Western Europe, allowing it to develop along its own unique path rather than being absorbed into the expanding Islamic world. Modern historians see in Tours a perfect example of how civilizations interact, not through simple conflict, but through complex patterns of resistance, adaptation, and exchange. The battle didn't end cultural interaction. It simply defined its terms. In its aftermath, both Christian Europe and the Islamic world had to adapt and evolve, finding new ways to coexist and interact. The religious impact was equally profound. The battle preserved the institutional structure of Christian Europe, allowing it to develop its distinct character. Meanwhile, the Islamic world, finding its expansion checked in one direction, would focus its energies elsewhere, leading to remarkable developments in science, art, and culture. Even today, the Battle of Tours offers us insights into how civilizations interact and evolve. It shows us that historical moments of conflict often lead not to the triumph of one culture over another, but to the establishment of complex patterns of coexistence and exchange. This wasn't just a battle that saved Europe, as some simplistic narratives suggest. It was a moment that helped define what Europe would become, not by shutting out external influences, but by establishing the terms under which different civilizations would interact, compete, and ultimately enrich each other. The Battle of Tours remains a testament to the complex, nuanced nature of historical developments, challenging simplistic narratives of conflict and offering profound insights into human cultural interactions. Charles Martel emerged as a pivotal figure in the Frankish kingdom during a period of significant political complexity. Born around 688 CE, he was not initially a king but served as the mayor of the palace, a position that effectively allowed him to wield true political and military power. In the shadowy corridors of the early Middle Ages emerged a figure whose leadership would forever alter the course of European history. Charles Martel, the Hammer. Let us unravel the tapestry of his remarkable legacy. Picture a Europe in turmoil, desperately needing someone to forge order from chaos. Enter Martel, a leader whose military genius would revolutionize warfare itself. He didn't just command armies, he transformed them. Under his guidance, The loose bands of Frankish warriors evolved into a disciplined fighting force that would become the envy of the medieval world. His military innovations were nothing short of revolutionary. Consider how he revolutionized cavalry warfare, not just training mounted warriors, but creating a whole new system of combat that would define medieval warfare for centuries to come. He understood that victory wasn't just about having the strongest army, but about having the most adaptable one. The Battle of Tours stands as his masterpiece of military strategy. Imagine the scene. His forces faced a superior cavalry force that had seemed unstoppable. But Martel had a vision. He positioned his men in a formation so innovative that it nullified the enemy's advantages. His infantry stood like an iron wall, their discipline unbreakable, their coordination perfect. This wasn't just a battle, it was a showcase of military genius that would be studied for generations. But Martel was more than just a warrior. He was a political architect who understood that true power required more than just military might. He systematically consolidated his authority, eliminating rivals not just through force, but through clever political maneuvering. He created a system of land grants that would evolve into feudalism, the backbone of medieval European society. His relationship with the church was a masterclass in political balance. At a time when religious authority could make or break a ruler, Martel walked a delicate line. He supported monasteries and religious institutions while using church lands to fund his military campaigns, a bold move that showed his political acumen. Consider his personal qualities. Here was a leader who could inspire loyalty in battle-hardened warriors while navigating the complex politics of his time. He wasn't just strong, he was smart. He wasn't just brave, he was visionary. His charisma wasn't just about personality, it was about results. His legacy extends far beyond his lifetime. The political structures he created laid the groundwork for the Carolingian dynasty, which would reach its zenith under his grandson, Charlemagne. He didn't just win battles. He created the foundations for medieval European civilization. Modern historians see in Martel a leader who was centuries ahead of his time. He understood that military power alone wasn't enough. True leadership required a sophisticated blend of military prowess, political acumen, and administrative skill. He was, in many ways, the architect of medieval Europe. What sets Martel apart in the pantheon of great leaders was his ability to see the bigger picture. While others fought for immediate gain, he built for the future. His reforms weren't just about winning battles. They were about creating a sustainable system of governance that would outlive him. Charles Martel represents a remarkable example of transformative leadership, demonstrating how individual capabilities can reshape historical trajectories. Picture, if you will, a turning point that would forever alter the course of medieval history, the Battle of Tours. This pivotal moment reshaped the very foundations of power across Europe and the Islamic world. In the wake of this momentous battle, the mighty Umayyad Caliphate faced unprecedented challenges. Their dreams of expansion crumbled, their military confidence shattered. Within their borders, whispers of dissent grew louder as their central authority began to waver. But as one power declined, another rose. The Franks, emboldened by their victory, began a remarkable ascent. Under their banner, territories united, and a new order emerged. Their administrative structures grew stronger, their reputation more formidable. From this fertile ground sprouted the legendary Carolingian dynasty. Through the leadership of figures like Pepin the Short and the legendary Charlemagne, a new empire took shape. Their sophisticated systems of governance would lay the groundwork for the Holy Roman Empire. The ripples of Tours spread far and wide. Across Europe, the balance of power shifted dramatically. New alliances formed, while clear cultural and religious boundaries emerged. The Islamic world, adapting to this new reality, turned inward, fostering remarkable cultural and intellectual developments. These changes would echo through centuries. They shaped the formation of future states, established patterns of interaction between civilizations, and created a legacy that historians still debate today. Modern scholars remind us that this story isn't simply about victory and defeat. It's a testament to the complex tapestry of human civilization, where cultures clash, adapt, and ultimately transform. The Battle of Tours stands as a reminder that history's greatest moments often mark not just endings, but beginnings, the birth of new orders, new ideas, and new ways of understanding our world. When we look back through the corridors of time, the Battle of Tours stands as more than just a clash of armies. It represents a moment when the very course of human civilization hung in the balance, a crossroads where different worlds met, and history itself seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't merely a battle of swords and shields. No, this was a confluence of cultures, beliefs, and destinies. Imagine, if you will, standing at this pivotal moment, where the fate of entire civilizations teetered on the edge of transformation. From this singular event, we draw profound lessons that echo through the centuries. We learn that history isn't a straight path, but rather a complex tapestry of choices, chances, and changes. A single decision, a moment of strategic brilliance, can alter the course of nations. Consider the leaders who stood at this crossroads. Their story teaches us that true leadership transcends mere resources. It's about vision, adaptability, and the courage to face seemingly impossible odds. But perhaps most fascinating is the story of cultural resilience that emerged from this clash. Like mighty rivers meeting, these civilizations didn't simply collide. They influenced each other, adapted, and evolved. Even in conflict, they demonstrated humanity's remarkable capacity for preservation and growth. Today, as we grapple with our own global challenges, the Battle of Tours offers us a mirror to our present. It reminds us that civilization's greatest moments often arise not from simple victory or defeat, but from our capacity to learn, adapt, and grow through our encounters with the unfamiliar. This battle, this moment frozen in time, continues to whisper its lessons to us. It speaks of human resilience, of strategic brilliance, of cultural preservation in the face of overwhelming odds. But most importantly, it reminds us that history is not just a series of events. It's a testament to the enduring spirit of human civilization. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel Medieval Chronicles to stay up to date with more fascinating content about the Middle Ages.